Yes, sir. All gas, no break. Welcome to the show. Just me on this one. Trump got rid of DEI, so that means I don't have to have Justin and Mo on the show anymore. I'll do it my damn self. Nah, they're just, it's just one of those days where nobody answers their phone and don't know where anybody is, which is something that tends to happen from time to time. But this is one of the last episodes of the All Gas No Break podcast. We're probably gonna have to, obviously, gonna have to change the name here since it is a new regime. No more gas or breaks. But make sure you wear your seatbelts because Aaron Glenn, the new head coach, was introduced about a week ago. We've been trying to record this podcast like all week, and it just hasn't happened until now. So I figured I'd just do it my damn self and just kind of react a little bit to everything that's gone on Jets land here over the past week. So, as we all know now, Aaron Glenn had his introductory press conference. He told the players to buckle their damn seatbelts and to get ready for the ride because we're the freaking New York Jets and we are built for this shit. Those are his exact words, which it's hard not to get pumped up. Like nothing really. You don't really win anything for having a good press conference, obviously, but I think that a bad press conference can definitely set the tone. Because that's kind of what that's kind of like the one point of like an introductory press conference is kind of setting the tone. Like, all right, you're a new voice, a new new face of the organization. Usually, in most cases, the head coach is like the face of the organization. Sometimes it might be the quarterback if you got like a Mahomes or Tom Brady or someone like that. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers has kind of been, I guess, the pseudo face of this organization for a while, but we'll see. We'll see about that. But Aaron Glenn came in and he established that it's his team and everything's about the team and the roster, and no one player is going to be above that. But yeah, I thought he did. Made a pretty good first impression with the presser. The media definitely was trying to get an answer out of him as far as the whole Aaron Rodgers thing. They were trying to get him to say something, anything. There's been a lot of rumors swirling around on social media, both that both that Aaron Glenn would want Aaron Rodgers back, and that it's not likely that Rodgers is back. So who knows what to believe anymore. I believe it's 50-50, but the media was grilling him a little bit about it, and he's just like, you're not going to get me. Like, he's like, you can ask me the same question, you can reword it, you can ask me as many times as you want, I'm going to give you the same answer. So, don't waste your time. Ask me something else. One of the reporters also asked him about like Sauce Gardner, and he gave like a very short, like non-answer. Basically said that he's a hell of a player, but he didn't really go out of his way to like overly praise him, which I do. I think that is a good thing, as far as like a new voice and holding the players accountable and just a new energy. And it seems like Aaron Glenn has the right energy, and that. And he definitely has the right energy, and you definitely got the takeaway there. Like he gets it, like he's a Jet through and through. I think if you're a Jets fan, and if you're around my age or older, if you're like 30 or older, you probably have some memory of that AFC Championship game in 1998, and that's obviously something that if you're a real through and through Jets fan, then that's a loss that to this day probably still bothers you. I know it still bothers me. And it's nice to hear Aaron Glenn share that same sentiment, that that he also, that he remembers that, and that he said part of the reason that he came back was because of that, and how he wants to get that back and like basically finish the job. So I definitely appreciate that. And, time will tell how this will go. They also hired a GM, Darren Mougey, or Mougey. I already forget how to pronounce his name. It seems like it's going to be more of Aaron Glenn calling the shots and kind of running the team. And it seems like Mougey's more so there. I feel like Aaron Glenn's going to be like doing the scouting and like the evaluating. Well, I think Mougey also has like a scouting background himself. Yeah, he's been a scout before too, so I'm sure it'll be like a collaborative effort as far as the scouting goes. I feel like Glenn might have more say in like what players they get, because ultimately they're going to be running Glenn's. They're going to be running his schemes like that he wants to run, and he's the person now who's tasked with giving this team, the New York Jets, a much needed identity, something they really haven't had in quite a while. I mean, their identity has always been defense, and it seems like that's, obviously that's going to kind of continue. They kind of got away from that this year, where they really didn't have any identity at all. They were kind of directionless. So he's here to, bring back the identity, bring back, try to establish some semblance of a winning culture. But the only way you can do that is by winning games. He even said it, rah-rah speeches do not change the culture. People do. Winning does. So he gets that. He's worked his way up, and I truly think that he definitely deserves the opportunity at hand, and I am cautiously optimistic. I mean, as far as the presser goes, like I said before, you're not winning anything with a good presser, but we all remember the Adam Gase press conference, and you watched that press conference and you knew that this was going to go poorly right away. I mean, maybe you didn't even need to watch the press conference to know that. Maybe you probably just knew it was going to go poorly as soon as you got like the notification that Adam Gase was going to be the next Jets head coach. But if you had any semblance of hope, it was stripped away from you after that press conference when he showed up all bug-eyed and coked out, maybe. But yeah, Aaron Glenn, I think, and as far as like this year's press conferences go, I think Aaron Glenn probably had one of the better ones. I thought that Vrabel, from what I watched, I thought his press conference was pretty good, but obviously I didn't. I thought it was like pretty good objectively, but obviously didn't enjoy it as a Jets fan, especially if you're someone who wanted Vrabel to get hired. I didn't necessarily want Vrabel, but I think the Jets wanted Vrabel, and it's pretty clear that he just used them. But overall, thought that his press conference did a pretty good job. Like if I was a Patriots fan, like I'd be pretty hyped on that. Just like if you're a Jets fan, I think like you should. It's okay to even if you don't win anything out of it, it's okay to enjoy a press conference. That's all we really have right now. So it's not like, oh, we're going to the Super Bowl because Aaron Glenn gave a good press conference, but I think he did a better job than some of these other guys. I mean, Liam Cohen's, Duval. What else do I need to say? That was pretty cringe, and that I think that feels like it could be. It feels like it could be doomed from the start. I mean, Liam Cohen, great, great offensive mind and all that. Did a great job with Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But now he's not the OC anymore. He's the head coach. He's got to be a leader. Obviously, he's still going to have his hand in the offense, and that's like one of his main jobs. But he's also, he's got to lead these, 53 men into battle every week. And, just being that dork who said Duval, like, I don't know. I wouldn't be playing too hard for someone like that. I don't think. I mean, I'm not I'm not an athlete, but I don't think that would really don't think that would really bring out the best in me personally. So I mean, we'll see how that goes. I thought Ben Johnson was okay, but he gives off like dorky vibes too. I really think and obviously and then Brian Schottenheimer just went like full Delulu mode in his presser with the Cowboys as their head coach, which is, by the way, that is hilarious. That is funnier than if the Jets hired Rex Ryan. Not even kidding. But yeah, so Aaron Glenn was introduced. Darren Mougey was also introduced a few days before that. It was announced that he would be the next GM. When we got down to like the three finalists after the 33rd team called like every living, breathing human being that had some sort of football experience that would answer the phone for them for an interview. When you got down to the second round interviews, when it was Mougey, you had, I think Grigson was like one of the finalists, like one of the final names. Like that wouldn't have been good. The Lance Newmark, the guy from Detroit, and the guy from Cincy, forget his name, but the assistant there. And when you started to look more into it, when it was those like 3 or 4 finalists, I really felt like Darren Mougey was the best choice out of all of them. I would have preferred someone with more experience. I don't know why. We didn't go for Thomas Dimitrov. I think that would have been, I think that would have been a home run of a hire. But I guess they didn't feel that way, or maybe they felt he was too far removed from football over the last 4 or 5 years to dip his feet back into it. I don't know. The Newmark thing was particularly weird because it really felt like, for a minute, Newmark was going to be the guy that got hired. So it felt like it was almost like going to be a done deal. Like it felt like, I don't know, I'd say like a week or two, like 2 weeks ago, if it was like probably like an 85% chance like that Newmark was going to be the new GM. But then I guess like he must have bombed his interview or something, because like out of nowhere it just kind of like out of nowhere he just, his name just, you just stopped hearing his name. And then Josina Anderson, I believe it was, dropped the news that it was going to be Darren Mougey. Wasn't confirmed right away. I think about 24 hours though it was confirmed that Darren Mougey was in fact going to be the new New York Jets general manager. So I do think he was the best. I think he was the best option out of who was left. He did help. He was just with Denver, so he did help them as far as as far as being a part of that front office. Obviously, they make the trade for Russell Wilson, and obviously that was a complete unmitigated disaster for the Broncos. But to his credit, he also helped, I guess, with the scouting and the drafting of Bo Nix. And he helped the Broncos as far as navigating that situation after giving up like all those, premium assets for Russell Wilson and then him being washed. They were able to turn it around pretty quickly. And so he was a part of that. So, I think that is something to be encouraged by. He was their director of personnel before that. He's been with the Broncos for like pretty much his whole career. He's been with the Broncos. And he's pretty much, he started out as a scouting intern and then he became a scouting assistant. Then by 2014, by his third year, he became an area scout, and then he became like one of their scouting directors. So he's made like he's like worked his way up the he's like worked his way up the food chain there in Denver. So a good amount of a good amount of experience. He was part of the the teams that went to the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. He was a scout for those years. He also was part of their playoff drought, which before this year, the Broncos had the second longest playoff drought in the NFL, behind only yours truly, the New York Jets. So as far as just going through his resume, kind of just want to like be fair and point out the good and the bad. So he was there for quite a bit of that, and it seems like he got a promotion. So it seems like it's been a long time coming for him to become a GM too. He's only 39 years old, so pretty young. So hopefully he'll be like forward thinking and innovative. That's the hope. I just hope that with all these guys that they're bringing in, like Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey, and we'll get into the rest of the coaching staff in a minute. But with all these hires that they're making, I just hope that they're like a forward-thinking organization, because I think that the problem with a lot of these previous regimes is that they were kind of stuck either in a different era or just stuck in their ways of like things that just didn't work. Like with Robert Saleh and Nate Hackett and like Saleh's coaching staff, it always felt like they'd rather just play and coach the game their way and lose rather than try something different and maybe win. They just seemed very stubborn and reluctant to changing things or making adjustments. They just seemed very stuck in their ways. They just, they weren't very forward thinking. Neither was Adam Gase. Todd Bowles coached games to not lose, lost a lot of games. Rex Ryan, he had the bravado and the aggression, at least on the defensive side, but the offense was way too conservative, and they just could never get a quarterback developed, which ended up being his undoing. So I just hope that, for once, that we have a forward-thinking staff, both offensively and defensively, because that's something that the Jets have severely been lacking throughout this whole time, is just like that forward-thinking ability. So, that's my hope. He's only 39. Obviously, Aaron Glenn, not that old either. And he's been, active in coaching and scouting. Aaron Glenn's 52, but, former player, obviously has a lot of fire and a lot of passion. He's been coaching since like 2014. So he's been coaching for the last 10 years. So, and he's been a part of like some pretty successful organizations. So the hope is that he can apply, what he's seen and learned, to being a head coach. And the hope is that he's also gotten it right with the hires that he's made for his staff, which is coming together. So the Jets hired Steve Wilks to be their defensive coordinator. And then their offensive coordinator is Tanner Engstrand. So Tanner was the passing game coordinator for the Lions the past 2 years. He was their tight ends coach and their passing game coordinator in 2022. The year before that, which was Dan Campbell's first year, he was the quality control coach on offense for the Lions. He also had a year of coaching the Lions as an offensive assistant in 2020. And before that, he had done quite a bit at San Diego, not San Diego State, but the University of San Diego, the San Diego Toreros. He played there, or he was a graduate assistant then a running backs coach, quarterbacks coach, OC and quarterbacks coach. Then he was assistant head coach, OC, and quarterbacks coach. So he had been at San Diego for a good 12 years, and every couple of years he got a promotion and worked his way up to being the OC, the assistant head coach, and the quarterbacks coach. Now the knock on Engstrand, or what people will say that are detractors of him, are that if he's so good or whatever, why didn't Dan Campbell promote him to OC after Ben Johnson took the Bears job? Or why didn't Ben Johnson take Tanner Engstrand with him to Chicago to be his OC? And I don't know what the answer to that is. Dan Campbell hired our boy John Morton, who I was actually hoping that we would hire, because I actually thought that John Morton was a pretty good offensive coordinator, but he got fired because the Jets. The Jets didn't run the ball enough in 2017. But that offense, that team only won 5 games, but they were expected to win like 2, maybe 1. And they ended up winning 5 games. And like their offense was actually like a watchable offense with Josh McCown, who was like, I think like, in his late 30s or maybe 40 at that point. And then also like Robbie Anderson and like Jermaine Kearse and like whoever the fuck else was on that team. Sharon Peak, maybe. I don't know. Dark times for that wide receiver room, and hopefully we are not heading back towards dark times. More on that in a little bit, though. But I don't really know the answer to that. Dan Campbell went with John Morton, and then the Bears. Who the Bears hire? The Bears offensive coordinator is probably should. Declan Doyles is the new Bears offensive coordinator. I'm don't really know much about him, but these people have their guys, and I think you gotta give. I think you got to give Engstrand a fair shot at this. I probably would have preferred a more experienced offensive coordinator, but there was that one guy from the Rams who everyone kind of found out about him, and then it went to like, oh, this guy, what's his name, Cayley, Nick Cayley. It kind of went from like. Who is this guy to, oh, this guy needs to be our offensive coordinator. But he's over in LA with Mike LaFleur. I'm sure Mike LaFleur probably didn't tell him great things about us, and who could blame him? And then also, like, after Liam Cohen spurned the Bucks for the Jaguars, that job would probably be a lot more attractive because, you got Baker, and you're going to have Mike Evans, that you're going to have Chris Godwin. What version of Chris Godwin, or if he'll still be able to play, we don't know, but you'll know that he'll be there. You got a pretty good young tight end in Cade Otton. So, and then you have great running backs. You got Rashad White and Bucky Irving. So you got like a pretty good, you got a pretty good tandem in the backfield. A lot more question marks with the Jets. We don't really know who our quarterback's going to be. We still have Garrett Wilson, but how long is that going to last? We still have Breece Hall, but how long is that going to last? And then, not really a whole lot to write home about in the tight end room. And for the love of God, can this new regime, can we please, this will be like a real tell-all sign of like, if this regime is the right regime, is can they get the tight end position right? Whether it's through the draft or through free agency. I would probably prefer to draft one. There's a few pretty good tight ends that are going to be in this draft. There's Tyler Warren from Penn State. He's really good. Fuck Penn State, but Tyler Warren looks like he'll be really good. There's Colston Loveland out of Michigan. He's ranked pretty high. There's Luke Leachy from Iowa. Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green. So there's some tight end talent in this draft. If this team can like get a tight end, like a good tight end, and like utilize them correctly, I think that'll be like a real tell-all sign if like we got this right. So time will tell. We'll see what they do. I don't really know who like the free agent tight ends are, but like there's probably not too many good ones. I don't think, we could bring back Tyler Conklin, but like I honestly see Tyler Conklin as like more of a tight end too anyway. But yeah, that would definitely be like a sign of whether or not we're like heading in the right direction with this regime, because for whatever reason we've never drafted the right tight ends, or we've never really signed the right ones, and we've never really used tight ends correctly. We also don't cover tight ends on defense. So just if we could just like this new regime, if we could just be like, hey, like, it's 2025 and tight ends matter in NFL football this day and age, like, I think that would be a pretty good sign. Let's see. Yeah, so back to Tanner Enstrad. I mean, you just got to see how he does. I think if the Jets offense is not good, especially if they do draft a quarterback this year, which I don't think is likely. I don't think it's likely that they're going to get that they're going to get like a first round quarterback. I think we're going to hear a lot about Jackson Dart and him shooting up into the first round of the draft. I think we'll hear a lot about that. There's maybe the possibility that Shadur Sanders falls. I'd say that's probably not going to happen. There's probably like a less than 1% chance that they trade up to pick one to get Cam Ward. I'd be shocked if it happened. I'd be pretty pumped if it did. I mean, it's a big risk though, and I don't know how many. I don't know if they're going to be. I don't know how bold they're going to be off the bat, especially with kind of like where they're at and like what this year is kind of like I wouldn't call it a punt year. I think it's kind of like a see what you have and evaluate internally type of year. Evaluate the pieces that you have and then, figure out what you need to add. And, I think they're probably looking at 2026 as more of the year where they draft what they hope to be a franchise quarterback. And that'll be like the pick, I think, that really hinges that their success will really hinge upon will be like what quarterback they end up getting in 2026. I don't really think they're going to get one this year. I mean, maybe they draft one on like day 2 or 3, but it's not likely. I would highly doubt that they would. I would highly doubt that they start right away. So yeah, a lot of unknown with Tanner Engstrad. I wouldn't hate if they added like an offensive assistant. They do have a few. I mean, they have Walter Kuzmarek and offensive assistant fellowship. They have Junior Taylor. I'm looking at the Jets coaching staff website now. There was rumors about Todd Haley coming on as kind of like some sort of like senior consultant, senior assistant or something like that. I think it will be a pretty, I don't think that would be a bad idea to get him, because I think that one mistake that the previous regime made, not even a mistake, but, obviously what happened to Greg Knapp was extremely, extremely unfortunate that he lost his life in that biking accident. And he was supposed to be like the guy with the he was like the experienced guy on Robert Saleh's staff, like, and that was like a staff like pretty much full of rookies. And you know, that happened. It's, absolutely tragic and just brutal, and a devastating loss. It was also a pretty devastating loss as far as that coaching staff, because I think without his without that experienced voice in the room, I think that coaching staff kind of lost its way from the beginning. So I would like to see them get some sort of like senior offensive assistant, whether it's Todd Haley or maybe someone else. Like the Bears just got Eric Bieniemy. I think he's going to be their running backs coach. Like, I wouldn't have hated if they just, get someone, if you just get someone with experience on the offensive side of the ball to help, to help move that in the direction. Cause right now I don't really know what our offense is going to look like. Then defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn hired Steve Wilkes, he is the most experienced coach on this staff. He's been coaching since he's been coaching in football since 1995. And he's been coaching in the NFL since 2006, with a brief return to college during that time too. But he was his most recent stint in the NFL was he was the 49ers. So he was the Carolina Panthers interim head coach in 2022 after they fired Matt Rule. That I don't think it's really fair to judge him on that, because that was just such a dumpster. That's basically like judging Jeff Ulbrich for what he did with the Jets. You can't really judge him on that, and obviously the Falcons understood that, and they weren't hesitant to hire him as their defensive coordinator. But he was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers in 2023. Niners went to the Super Bowl. I was looking before I started recording. I was looking at some of their statistics from that year. Obviously, that defense was not very consistent, and they had their issues. And obviously, they did get they did kind of get cooked in the playoffs, and ultimately he ended up getting fired after they lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs last year. So he did he was kind of, his hands were kind of on that. He did kind of take the fall for for what happened in that Super Bowl, kind of blowing the lead and then blowing it in overtime. But looking at their defensive rankings, they were 8th overall in the regular season. So I mean, that's pretty solid, pretty good. And I think you could argue that the Jets defense maybe has more talent on their defense than the 49ers. I mean, no one on the Jets is more talented than Nick Bosa, but there's but as far as the sum of the whole, the sum of all the parts, I'd say the Jets defense as a whole has more talent than the 49ers. So there'd be more to work with, obviously, and obviously can work with Aaron Glenn, and hopefully, they can unlock some more potential out of some of these players on defense, particularly out of Sauce. I mean, obviously he was an All-Pro his first 2 years, and he actually was pretty good last year for as much as he got criticized. I think the criticism is really I think the criticism was really that his inability to tackle, and just kind of showed a lack of maturity, a lack of accountability at times. So you hope that Glenn can kind of get that, instill those things in him, and then also teach him to be more to kind of unlock his ability to intercept more passes and make more of an impact on the game in that way. Because Sauce is a great player, but he hasn't had like super high impact plays because he kind of just like Revis is more just kind of like taking taking a receiver away or taking half of the field away. They also need him to travel with the number ones. Because especially we're not going to have DJ Reed anymore, most likely. So Sauce will be pretty much the undisputed CB1 of the team. So if he's CB1, he should follow the WR1. He should follow them all game. And I think that'll I think we'll learn a lot about how good Sauce really is when if and when they do that. So I'm hoping that they do. But yeah, I mean, Steve Wilkes, a lot of experience. I think, I have no qualms or no doubts about that hire. Then looking at some of the assistants that the Jets hired, they hired their quarterback coach today. They hired Charles London. Got to be honest, I wasn't too crazy. The more I looked into this, the less I'm crazy about it. I mean, he's been so he was a running backs coach at like Duke, and then he was the Bears offensive quality control coach from 2007 to 2009. He was the Texans running back coach from 2014 to 2017, and then he was the Bears running backs coach from 2018 to 2020. As a quarterbacks coach, he was with the Falcons in 2021, 2022, and he was with the Titans in 2023, and then he was with the Seahawks this past season. So the Falcons from 2021 to 2022 were pretty oof at the it was pretty oof at the quarterback position. Desmond Ridder was not it. They had Marcus Mariota, so I guess he did what he could with him. He helped develop Will Levis for whatever that's worth, and then he was with the the Seahawks this past year, so he was with Geno. Geno, I was looking at his stats earlier. He had almost it's hard to say whether or not he had a better year this year than last year. He threw for more yards. I mean, none of the years were better than his 2022 season. That was like his career year, but he threw for more yards this year than he did last year. And he threw for one more touchdown. But he also threw 6 more picks this year. So I don't know if so I'm not too crazy about this hire. We'll have to see who the quarterback is, whether that's Aaron Rodgers, Tyrod Taylor, maybe somebody else. I don't really I think the options obviously on free agency are going to be pretty scarce. So I really think it's 50-50 whether or not Rodgers comes back at this point. And I'm kind of cool with whatever, because I mean, this isn't like a win it all type of year. This is definitely like a transition year, and it is like at the end of the day, is it really worth it to bring Aaron Rodgers back unless you have a chance to win a Super Bowl? Probably not. But at the same time, you're in the last year, Garrett. Garrett Wilson's rookie deal. Well, second to last, because I'm pretty sure his 5th-year option would have been picked up. But obviously, and there's been some rumblings about him. I don't think it's a secret that Garrett Wilson's like not happy, and part of that has to do probably with Aaron Rodgers and kind of not even that he's not getting his volume of targets, but that they're just not doing things, or this past year they were not doing things to win games. It was kind of just like the Aaron Rodgers and Friends show on offense, and Garrett was like not really part of that clique. So there were times where he was open where Aaron didn't look his way. But at the same time, the other options, it gets pretty bleak pretty quickly. I mean, I like Tyrod Taylor. I think he's someone that could run the offense professionally and efficiently. But he'll probably, he's old and injury prone. I mean, Rodgers is old and injury prone too. So, there really aren't like a lot of great options as far as the quarterbacks go. I mean, I do think you have to give Jordan Travis a look at some point, but he hasn't played or really even practiced yet. So, I'd highly doubt that he would be like the opening day starter. I think the opening day starter will be Aaron Rodgers or Tyrod Taylor. There's been some chatter at Justin Fields, but I think he's staying in Pittsburgh. I think Russ will probably end up going to like Vegas or something to play with Pete Carroll. And I think that, have a reunion there. And I think that Fields is going to end up staying at the Steelers, and they're going to end up giving him like more of a real shot this coming year. So yeah, I really do think it's going to be either Rodgers or Tyrod. So we'll just have to see, I guess. Hopefully we find out soon. I don't really want this whole dragging through the mud. The Super Bowl's coming up. I say we need to know whether or not Aaron Rodgers is going to be a part of this thing by like 1 week after the Super Bowl tops. Like, we should know. Anything else, you kind of approach the territory of it just getting ridiculous again. And we don't need that. We don't need the distraction. And the more I think and the more I talk about it, the more I think, maybe it is just for the best while you're trying to like build this new culture. I mean, Rodgers is probably the best option for this year alone. He's probably the best quarterback that the Jets could put out there and put under center, in September of 2025, assuming he wants to play and wants to be back. I say Rodgers is probably the best option. He's probably like a little bit better than Tyrod Taylor. But Tyrod might be just like the better option as far as mobility goes, and as far as just kind of like keeping things like, low key, not, we don't necessarily need all this Pat McAfee bullshit and throwing teammates under the bus, and, Rodgers, getting cliquey with people or whatever weird shit he likes to do. It should just be about the culture and like what Aaron Glenn is trying to establish. So I think Rodgers needs to be on board with that. He needs to be on board with whatever system Tanner Engstrand wants to implement. He worked with the Lions. The Lions like to run a lot of motion, and they get very creative on offense. A lot of trick plays, things like that. They do run a lot of motion to, throw receivers, throw the defenses off, and get looks, which is why you run motion. It's to figure out like what look the defense is giving you. That's like half of the reason why you do it. Aside from, it also creates mismatches in certain situations. It creates confusion. But Rodgers is notoriously anti-motion. He runs a very static offense. I think we kind of saw that last year when Todd Downing took over the play calling. There was like a lot more motion and a lot more creativity, like in the scripted plays at the beginning. And then it seemed like Rodgers eventually would just check out of that and just check into like doing his own shit. So, yeah, I don't know. We should have an answer on that, I'd say, within the next week or two. Anything beyond that, it's going to just be annoying. I would say, yeah, if he doesn't let you know by like President's Day, I'd say, yeah, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't let you know by President's Day, which is the Monday, it's 8 days after the Super Bowl. So it's not the Monday after the Super Bowl, but it's the Monday after the Sunday after the Super Bowl. So if Rodgers doesn't let you know by then you just say, hey, man, thanks. Didn't work out. We're moving forward with Tyrod. And that'll be that. And he can decide to either retire at that point, or he can, he'll probably just sit on the couch until a quarterback gets hurt. And I think, as far as the cost goes, you would be cutting costs. It's going to cost you, Aaron Rodgers is going to cost you a lot of money anyway, but you could get ahead of it and save a little bit of money if you cut or trade him rather than keeping him. He would have to probably take a significant pay cut if he does want to come back, because, what he is at this point is just not really worth the money he's making. And, the Jets are kind of strapped for cap space too. So they kind of don't have a lot of flexibility to do a whole lot in free agency. I think this free agency offseason is going to be pretty quiet. I think it's going to be pretty draft oriented, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The teams that win free agency usually don't win. You win through, building through the draft and drafting well, drafting the right positions and the right players at those positions. And there is some talent on this roster, but it's definitely a conundrum because you also have to realize, like, Garrett Wilson's getting sick of the losing. We already know that. Aaron Rodgers might give you the best chance to win the most amount of games next year, possibly get into a playoffs, dare I say. I mean, with, if like coaching really was the problem last year, which I think the coaching was probably like 90% of the problem last year, and I think Rodgers was a part of that problem too. I think that if you look at this team and you think, all right, like, with like at least average coaching, which I think whatever Aaron Glenn's giving you, obviously you don't know that, he's inexperienced, but I think whatever Aaron Glenn's giving you, I think it's going to be better coaching than Robert Saleh and or Jeff Ulbrich. So the coaching can only get better. You assume, I don't know who the kicker is going to be, but you assume that they're going to be, let's assume you just have like an average kicker. That might be another win or two. Then maybe you feel like you can maybe win. Like, maybe this is a team that, and I think that we kind of overrate the talent that's on this team and on this roster a little bit as Jets fans. Like, there is some talent, but it's not as talented as it was necessarily being made out to be, like, going into last year. But, maybe then you think, all right, like, maybe this is a team that can win, like, maybe scratch and claw maybe they're a team that's good enough to scratch and claw their way to like 9 wins and possibly get into a wild card spot and end the playoff drought. I don't know. And, more likely, I feel like maybe they win like 6 or 7 games. But either way, I do just want to see some competitive football. And I don't want to see, because I feel like, with Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, like their first year, like they really just punted that year. And it wasn't even a punt year. It was just like a waste. It was just a wasted year. I don't want this year to be a waste. Like, it's okay if we're not like, I'm not saying we have to have a playoff mandate year one, but like you cannot have this year be a waste. It needs to be productive in some way, and you need to do some winning and like keep your players, keep the players happy and make it a culture that people at least want to be a part of. But you got to start winning sooner rather than later. But for year one. For year one, I would say, obviously, maybe temper the expectations a little bit. But yeah, the Charles London hire, wasn't too crazy about that. I'm just all over the place now. Who else did we hire? We hired Chris Banjo as a special teams coordinator. Now there was some talk about former guest of the show, Mike Westhoff. Possibly joining the staff, but I think he's like done coaching. But I do believe that he was a consultant and kind of helped. I mean, he has ties with Aaron Glenn, and he has ties to Westhoff and like Sean Payton. So I do think that Westhoff was a consultant and that he was involved, and he kind of learned under Westhoff. So I think that's a pretty, I think that's a pretty solid hire. I think overall, if special teams can be not a weakness, that would be a good thing. And I think that, Chris Banjo could potentially be that guy. And then you have Sean Jefferson, our wide receivers coach. He has 20 years of coaching experience. He was actually our assistant head coach and wide receivers coach under the Gase regime. Not sure if I really want to have any retreads from Gase's staff, but also hard to really judge him based on what happened, considering how untalented those teams were and how bad of a coach, how bad of a coach Gase was, and just how bad everything around him was. He also was a wide receivers coach for the Panthers in 2023. He was with the Cardinals from 2021 to 22. Before the Jets, he was with the Dolphins, Titans, and Lions. So he did work a little bit with Calvin Johnson. But yeah, so I mean, you do have a decent amount of experience there. So, that can't be a bad thing. Then you have Ryan Davis Sr., another defensive assistant. Not gonna lie, I don't know too much about him. I mean, he just he was like an intern last year, and he was an intern for the Jets in 2023. This past year, he was a defensive assistant. It looks like he's going to be. It looks like, according to the website at least, it looks like he's still part of the staff. So maybe Glenn's keeping him around. So I do think it's probably in the best interest to kind of just clean house of anyone that was here. But yeah, we'll see. And then Junior Taylor, and then Walter Kuzmarek pretty much round out the staff. So we'll see if they make any more hires, like if they get like a more senior offensive guy in, or if they get any more consultants. But that's the staff so far. Very hard to really project how any of this is going to go. There's a lot of there's a lot of unknowns, but there's a lot of unknowns, like a lot of first time head coach, first time play caller. But I do think that there's also a good balance of like inexperience and also experience. Like Aaron Glenn has not been, he's never been a head coach before, but he's been working in coaching and scouting like long enough that, I kind of trust him at this point to be able to take the reins of a franchise. And I think that the Jets are the perfect franchise for him to take the reins, because everywhere he's gone, he's been part of, turning a loser into a winner, or at least a respectable franchise. So, I expect him to ultimately, hopefully, do the same for us. I do not want to be talking in 3 or 4 years about firing another coach and GM and, looking for the next guys. So, those are my overall thoughts on, the coach and the staff. A lot of will sees and a lot of unknowns. To end the show, last topic I'm going to go over is there's been a lot of chatter recently about Garrett Wilson possibly wanting out of New York. This isn't necessarily a new thing, but it's kind of started picking up steam again over the past couple of days. Now I haven't seen it from like anyone like, any like legitimate like reporters, like anyone on the beat or any national reporters. There hasn't been much chatter, but there have been some of those like engagement farming accounts have been saying that, like, the belief is that Garrett Wilson is unhappy and is going to eventually request a trade because he's tired of the losing and he's tired of all the coaching and quarterback changes. Now, as far as coaching changes, I mean, this will really only be the second, or I guess third head coach if you want to count Jeff Ulbricht's interim part of the season. I mean, it's just been Saleh since Garrett Wilson got there. It was just Saleh, and then it was Jeff Ulbrich for like 12 games. So it's really only been like 1.5 coaches so far over 3 years. So I think that the perception that he's pissed off about like all the coaching changes, it's not like we're changing coaches every 1 or 2 years. Like I think we changed coaches at the appropriate time. If anything, I would have changed coaches a year earlier. But here we are. But I think there is some validity. He might be getting sick of the quarterback changes that are constantly happening, and he does want to win. I don't think it's a secret that he does want to win. And obviously he has played with, he's played with one. Let's see, Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, 2, Mike White, 3, Chris Streveler, 4, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle. So that's 6 so far. Did Brett Rippon play at all? I don't know. So yeah, like 7, and Aaron Rodgers, 8. Tyrod Taylor for a couple. So he's played with like 9 quarterbacks in like 3 years. So there's definitely something to that. And it's hard to blame him, if he thinks that he could get a better opportunity elsewhere. The one thing he did do that people pointed out that is kind of legit and might be something, might just be classic negotiating tactics. He did the old, he unfollowed the Jets on the social medias, which is something that players seem to tend to do. I think it's something their agents tell them to do when they're in like negotiations, if they're either trying to get a trade or trying to get a new deal. So, there could be some gamesmanship going on there. But I'm not really going to really worry about it until it's like reported by, until it's reported by like Rich Cimini or like Antoine Staley, someone on the Jets beat reports that he wants a trade, or like Adam Schefter reports it. I'm not going to put too much stock into it. I think that Garrett Wilson will be back as a Jet next year. I think that the goal of this season does need to be to keep him happy and to figure out, what you're going to do if you can't keep him happy. Because if he doesn't want to stick around, then, getting picks and getting draft capital for 2026, where you might be in a position where you need to move up to get a quarterback, might not be a bad idea. But I'd rather him just stay. I think the first thing that the Jets should do is try to offer him an extension, see if he takes it, to at least show him the money, because money can change things, especially for someone like him who's young and still on his rookie deal. If you put a life-changing amount of money in front of him, he there's a possibility he'll take it. You don't know unless you try. So I think they got to at least offer him a long-term extension and make him one of the higher paid receivers in the league, like maybe one of the top 10 or top 5 highest paid receivers in the league. Not saying he is a top 5 receiver in the league, but it's about when you get your money. So maybe doing something like that will change things. I think I don't want to see him leave, just because like I do think he has the potential, if he does stay here, to probably be our best wide receiver in franchise history. I want him to kind of be like, I want him to experience what Terry McLaurin has experienced with the Commanders, where Terry McLaurin's been with the Commanders since 2019, and he's now seen them get the franchise quarterback and be able to turn it around. And, now the Commanders look to be, I think it all depends on Jaden Daniels, like having a good, healthy career, but Commanders look to be a team that'll be, contending, or at least a playoff team for years to come now. So, I want to see Garrett Wilson end up in a situation. I want to see it end up being a situation like that for him, where he sees it, where he's able to see it through, and he's able to get to like the light at the end of the tunnel, where he gets the franchise quarterback and he starts to win and he gets to start playing in playoff games, go to the AFC Championship game, things like that, and do it as a Jet. And he could rewrite the record books for this franchise if he stays. Plus, if you let him go, and if and let's just assume Rodgers and Devontae Adams are a package deal. If Rodgers isn't back, Devontae's not back, and then that wide receiver room gets real ugly real quick. So, I would say I'm not panicking about Garrett Wilson yet, but I'd say right now, the goal should be to keep him. If you get to that point where you have to give him up to get some capital for 2026 because it's not going well, he just doesn't want to be a part of it. He doesn't believe in Aaron Glenn, or he doesn't believe in the direction, or he just wants out, whatever the reason. Then you cross that bridge when you get there. But I don't think we're there yet. I think right now my worry meter probably at like a 4.5. So I'll let you know when it's time, when I think it's time to hit the panic button on Garrett Wilson. But I think we got at least another year before we get there. So hopefully this new regime and whoever is tasked with quarterbacking this team next year can help right the ship. Anyway, I think that's about it so far. I think that's about it for this episode for me. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. And make sure that you are following our social media accounts. Make sure you follow our Twitter at AllGasPod. Make sure you follow us at AllGasNoBreakPod on Instagram. If and when we do change the name and the branding and stuff, we'll probably keep the same accounts, but we'll update you on where to find us, when that time does happen. But yeah, this will be one of the last episodes. Probably got 1 or 2 episodes of All Gas before it's like really over, before we switch over, whether it's back to 4th and 20 or to whatever we're going to whatever we're going to do. Maybe we'll come up with some ideas for a name and run a poll or something like that. But yeah, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're following. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you next time. Oh, yeah, one last thing. As far as the Super Bowl goes, I think the Chiefs will win. I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be pretty close. I think Mahomes will win MVP. The Chiefs will probably win by like 3 to 7 points. Maybe like 31-24, something like that. I think Kendrick Lamar will, he'll call Drake a pedophile at the Super Bowl. That'll probably be pretty funny. And the Chiefs will three-peat. Most of the NFL world will hate it. I personally don't care. I'll make some money, and I kind of appreciate Mahomes and the Chiefs dynasty a little bit more just because of how much I hated the Patriots. Now it's like, all right, I can kind of appreciate this greatness, especially since their greatness is obstructing the Bills from ever winning anything. So I appreciate that too. So on that note, go Chiefs, go Jets. We'll probably do an episode like later this week or something, or if something happens. But yeah, we'll get one more episode with the full squad for the All Gas No Break era before we change gears. But thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again in the near future. Peace.